This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. I was just making a video for G66 UK who distribute Fractal, and I was kind of just showing how I use the FM3 and the FM9 live, and it got me thinking about, like, first of all, like my two favourite modelling devices that I've ever used live, which are the Helix, and on the floor down here I've got the FM9. Now these two things here, actually in the current state of things, I don't necessarily think they are on trend with where things seem to be going. So it seems to me that there's been like a bit of a miniaturization process of, well, these are too heavy to do that with, of the modeler. You think about, so, you know, GX100, like relatively modern, smaller form factor, the Quad Cortex, that the whole thing about that was it's like this size, the HX Stomp, the HX Stomp XL, and all of it is, I think they definitely have a place, and I think the idea is that touring folks and people that are necessarily going to have to take these things on planes and stuff, you know, the pros that are actually using the gear, they are going to want this gear, I think, in some cases to be, you know, smaller. And that's kind of the real benefit of something like the Quad Cortex. But I feel like there is a little bit of a danger that we miss out on what I think this has been like the golden era of actually having things at your feet that are super flexible, can do things that a real pedal board can't do. You know, in terms of like on the Fractal stuff, you can have toggles as well as long holds. I'll show you some of this stuff with the FM9. And the real, I think, game changer for this stuff has been scribble strips, which I'm going to presume those sorts of things are kind of somewhat expensive and take up a fair amount of space. But I don't know that for sure. But in order for you to be able to read a scribble strip and have the foot switch spaced accordingly, you know, you can't necessarily shrink the thing down too small, as well as having a screen. So like the Quad Cortex makes the trade-off that it has a fairly big screen and quite a lot of foot switches, but no scribble strips. For me, for sure, if I was gonna be, you know, going all modeler rig, like totally digital, it would either be the Helix, well, it is either the Helix or the FM9 that I tend to take, because this experience of having this laid out and having the colour scribble strips, which really do work quite nicely in terms of giving you some feedback about what is going to be under your feet, as well as like the actual layouts of these units for live use. So let me just plug this in. And for instance, I've got like a cover band preset here. So I would have like rhythm here, lead, clean, and here's a dotted delay one, and then I've got a drive pedal here, a phaser pedal here, another drive and a digital delay. If I press under here, I've got some additional bits and pieces, or I could have, because you can kind of flip those off. But snapshots along the bottom, stomps along the top, basically. Because the way that modelling used to work would be like the Digitech or Line 6 approach, which would be that you had specific foot switches that did specific things. So you'd like have a modulation switch, you'd have a drive switch and a delay switch. This was like the big sort of change that came along with the Helix and the FM9 after it, that you'd have like actual flexible foot switching, and you know, much closer to like quite a step JM sort of approach, or the Bradshaw rig, where you had these like scribble strips that were quite a step forward in terms of like gigging experience. I'm a little bit concerned that maybe that sort of thing would go away, depending on like price, size being a factor as well. So I'm relatively hopeful that they'll continue to have a flagship model that maybe is more designed for, you know, the domestic gigging person that doesn't necessarily have to fit it into a fly rig, but does want like the pro sort of level flagship with the scribble strips thing. I don't know, let me know your thoughts. Are you someone who's gone without scribble strips? Are they something that you really lean on? Yeah, for me, definitely when I tried gigging the Quad Cortex, it was a bit like, well, I'm missing something here. And this is, without a doubt, you know, the FM9 and the Helix are, for sure, I think, the best live sort of actual workflow things going. So I got those different sounds, and then lead. Where this is different in terms of workflow though is that I've actually got effect over here instead. And that enables me to have more in between. And mix things up on a gig. I've got a phaser there, or chorus, or if I long hold this chorus, I've got another effect underneath, a flanger. Certainly, the other thing going on with this though is that the Helix has all of these ins and outs, when I don't necessarily think that typically the idea anymore is that you'd be using this with a lot of external pedals. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so, because the pedal board would necessarily then be huge. So there are some things that they could do to take this down. I think like the Tone Master Pro is a fairly good example, that you could have a slightly smaller Helix that still has some of those premium kind of features, I guess. Let me know your thoughts.